Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, and it's certainly germane and pertinent to what's going on today in the West, is the definition of a police state. How does a police state come into being? Now, if you go on to somewhere like Wikipedia, they pretty much suggest that it's only something that happens when right-wing governments or right-wing conservatives coming, the people on the left, they don't mention that really all the most savage, brutal police states of history have all been from the political left, the communists in particular. The relationship is wherever you get ideological government, which is not government approved by the people, where you get ideological government, you also have to have, or as the people in the ideological government control would see it, they have to have an enforcement mechanism. And ideological government can only work if everybody thinks the same way. So the ideologues say, well, just crush, re-educate, or kill off those who do not think the same way, and then you have ideological conformity. But in order to achieve that sort of conformity, that ideological enforcement, you need a police state. So now a police state works really where there are ill-defined or uncodified laws. So the laws are extremely vague and become really catch-alls. You're a racist, or you're a homophobe, or you're a transphobe, or you're a xenophobe, or this or that. So these are very broad terms. It can sort of mean anything and have multiple meanings. It can be applied in many different ways and situations and contexts. So really, you can accuse anyone of being for example, a racist. Because these terms are ill-defined and causing harm or hurt to somebody, that could be anybody, but then that can be turned into a crime. That becomes the catch-all. Then you grab the person the citizen in that wide net, and then you can decide, okay, no, let's actually, we want this person to go in prison. Because once you've got them in that, you grab them in the net, you can then go through all their phone records and text messages and emails, online activity. You can go back, decades if you want, and you only need to find one thing, and that's enough, and then that can be used for a prosecution. Now, on top of that, in ideological law, and the Soviets and all the communist governments used this. They also, which you see today, by the way, in the US, they also could determine intent. You intended to overthrow the government of the people. You intended to be an enemy of the people. You intended to disseminate bourgeois ideas. You intended to organize a counter-revolution and so on. So once you can assert intent, so remember, you've caught the citizen in a vague catch-all law that technically anybody could have been in breach of. That then becomes, you've got them. Then you can go through everything, talk to anyone they know. You go through it in detail and search through with a fine-tooth comb, and you find, here you go. 25 years ago, they said they disagreed with mass migration. That means they're racist, means they're xenophobe, they're enemy of the people, they're a fascist, they're a Nazi, they're Hitler, and we can do what we want to them. And we say they intend to do this. Now, once you have a politicized police, which you need a politicized police force to do that sort of thing, you then also need a politicized court, because if you've got an independent court, the court's just going to slap all that nonsense down. So you need politicized courts. So that completes all those two key things. That the arbitrary law, so that the legislature produces arbitrary, catch-all, vague, ill-defined law that anyone can be in breach of, at the arbitrary discretion of the policeman or the politician that sends the policeman out to go and get you. Then you've got so you're in breach of the ill-defined law. Then the judge. Now, also on top of that, ostensibly you have lawyers to represent you, but those lawyers are also owned by the police state, and they'll never work again. They'll never get a job or anything, so that they have to do what they're told and sell out their client that they're supposed to be representing in court. So that's sort of the apparatus, the machinery of it. But now these things, of course, can't happen if you've got a government that's accountable to the people. So the very first step in this is to remove that accountability. Now that they can be accountable to whether they can be accountable to sort of outside forces, say a small little country that is wholly dependent on the goodwill of, I don't know, the United States to get a trade deal that allows them to sort of get by. So you can have that out, or in the case of the Western governments today, they're controlled by the ideological imperative imposed on them by the globalists. So their bosses are the globalists, and indeed the ideology that the globalists are forcing on them or requiring to follow. In return, they get waterfront mansions and the like, so they're okay with that. The politicians, I mean, in the West. So once you remove that accountability to the people, then you can move pretty quickly into a police state. Now, we can see the police state sort of acts and or activities, and the ideological nature of it in particular, where the climate change activists can block streets, can create mayhem and do all sorts of things, and the police have got a very hands-off attitude. But if any citizens try to move these climate activists out the way, the police are on go, bang, you're arrested. So the police are very much on one side of the situation here, and they are ordered and told to support the ideology and not support the citizen or the concerns of the citizen, or even whether laws are broken. Now, the other thing, of course, about a police state is that laws are meant to apply equally to everybody, but they don't. And so in a police state, they will arbitrarily apply the law rigorously to this person, but let that person go, as the case with the climate change activists or the BLM activists or so on. Now, when the COVID, where there were COVID demonstrations, the police were brutal in their treatment of the COVID demonstrators. And why was that? Why do they not treat the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa the same way? Why do they not treat the climate change people the same way? So clearly they're being very selective in how they apply the law. So the law is not equal for everybody. And that's, again, an idea of a police state where the law is enforced purely on the basis of the political ideological needs of the governing class, which is of course what happens today all across the Western world. If you have the wrong views in Germany, there's even talk that they'll declare you're not allowed to have a political party. That's the extent of a police state, as an example. So we're looking at a very ideological. So again, looking at the police state here. Once that accountability is lost, and you can almost plot it mathematically as the reduction in the government is its accountability to the people, to the citizens, declines. The activities, the arbitrary politicized activities of the police state increase. You can almost plot that. So given the arbitrary power of the police on the Western, we see it everywhere, whether it be Australia or Britain, and the United States, Canada, and so on. There are some sort of standouts where Canada's is, the treatment of the truckers in the United States, the treatment of the January 6th people. Again, this is a police state applying arbitrary, politicized ideological law rather than actual law. And you can see this thing firsthand in operation every day. It's the divorce courts. They're using the politicized law to go after, the police state law to go after Trump, for example, in the US. So I just wanted to sort of point that out, that a number of protections against a police state that the West once had have all broken down, all of them. It's quite astonishing. It could all have broken down. The idea of the representatives of the people, the elected representatives of the people, representing and reporting to and responsible to the people, that's gone. I would have thought years ago, I would have thought that was impossible for that to happen, yet it has. The politicization of courts and judges and police and prosecutors, I would have thought that would have been very difficult, but yet it has. All the human rights watch groups, that the NGOs all around the place that are supposed to be watching all these sort of things, I would have thought they, I'm talking 25, 30 years ago, I would have thought they would have, issued very serious warnings. The media would have been screaming about it. But all these things are now controlled by the globalists and have all been politicized and have all fallen in line with the ideology of the globalist project. So they're able to, all the defences that were in place, the independent judiciary and so on, they're all gone. And there are now many judges running around who believe it's their job, restorative justice and social justice and these sorts of things, rather than law and the evidence and the facts, are very much part of they're meant to be doing it. They're supposed to be doing it. And there's very few prosecutors around anymore that are not caught up in this sort of thing. So this is how a police state occurs. It's not necessarily you've got masses of police on the street rando shooting people. So that isn't what it means. It's the arbitrary application of politicized law, ideological and politicized law. That's a police state where they'll pull out the truncheons and beat the shit out of COVID protesters, but stand by and do nothing while BLM and Antifa torch buildings, murder people, and so on. This is it. The law in a non-police state. The police are accountable to the politicians, are accountable to the people, and the law is applied equally, and cases are heard by judges and independent courts and so on. All that's gone now. And so we have, in fact, a police state. Now, how much they exert, how much police state corrupt practices, if you like, they exert, will depend on how much they're getting away with. Trump is a threat to them, to the globalist ideological project. So they'll become very police state, arbitrary charges, activist prosecutors, activist judges, false charges, fabricated charges. They'll do the whole 9 yards there because Trump's a threat to, or other people who are a threat to them. But if they don't feel threatened and they think that the globalist project is going ahead as planned, then you won't see as much of the police state. So they control all these things, and if they feel particularly threatened, then they'll get quite savage with the police state activities. So it's rather than, say, in the Soviet Union, where it was all out permanent police state, because there was a permanent state of paranoia. In the West at the moment, they control all the institutions, and a lot of people still believe in those institutions, which gives them the de facto power, if you like, of a police state, and gives them that veneer of legitimacy that they certainly crave. The reality is, though, if people in large numbers, as they did in COVID, turned against them, then they will become very police state in response. So we see it, it's a bit of a floating sort of thing at the moment. But if they need to go full police state, they'll do it. And they have the means and the control of the institutions to do it. And they won't hesitate to do it if they feel threatened. You've been a task today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.